What if I told you that a man who spent his entire life cleaning floors died with millions of dollars in his bank account? While a Harvard-educated executive with a luxury mansion and high status ended up completely broke. Same country, same time, but completely different outcomes. This isn't about intelligence, it's about psychology. When we talk about books on making money, one name always comes up: The Psychology of Money. This book doesn't just talk about investing or finance, it explains how people behave with money, and why behavior matters more than knowledge. In this article, you're going to understand its core lessons through simple stories that you'll remember for years. Let's start with two people. The first is Ronald Read. He was a janitor and also worked at a gas station fixing cars. He lived a quiet and simple life, nothing extraordinary on the surface. The second is Richard Fuscone. He was a Harvard graduate, a top executive, and lived a luxurious lifestyle. Logically, you would expect Richard to be much richer, but reality tells a different story. In 2014, when Ronald Read died, he had over $8 million saved. On the other hand, Richard Fuscone lost everything during the 2008 financial crisis and went bankrupt. So the real question is, what did Ronald understand about money that Richard didn't? The answer is simple. Money is not about math, it's about behavior. People don't make financial decisions based on logic. They make them based on their experiences. If you grew up seeing people lose money in business, you will avoid risk. If you saw people get rich from stocks, you will take more risk. The world is the same, but people think differently, and that's what creates different outcomes. Now let's talk about luck. Take Bill Gates as an example. Yes, he worked hard, but he was also lucky. In 1968, very few schools had computers, but his school did. That gave him a huge advantage early on. He also had a friend named Kent Evans, who was even more talented, but he died young in an accident. If things had gone differently, we might have been talking about Kent instead of Bill Gates. This shows that success is not just about hard work. Luck and risk play a big role too. Another important lesson is about risk-taking. Richard Fuscone had money, status, and comfort, but he kept pushing for more. He took bigger risks and used more leverage. When the market collapsed in 2008, everything fell apart. The lesson here is powerful. You don't need to risk what you already have to get what you don't need. Instead, you need to understand compounding. Take Warren Buffett as an example. Most of his wealth came after the age of 65, not because he suddenly became smarter, but because his money had time to grow. Compounding works slowly at first, but over time, it becomes incredibly powerful. Ronald Read followed the same principle. He invested consistently for decades. No shortcuts, no hype, just patience. This is where most people fail. They start investing, but when the market drops, they panic. They sell their investments and quit. Then they say investing doesn't work, but the truth is, they didn't stay long enough for it to work. Wealth takes time, and patience is the price you have to pay. Another key idea is that getting rich and staying rich are two different skills. Many people know how to make money, but very few know how to keep it. Take Jesse Livermore, for example. He made millions during the 1929 market crash, but later lost everything. Making money requires taking risks, but keeping money requires discipline and control. You also don't need to be right all the time to build wealth. Even the best investors are wrong most of the time. What matters is that their few big wins are large enough to cover all their losses and still leave them ahead. This is how wealth really works. There's also an interesting concept called the man in the car paradox. When you see someone driving a luxury car, you're not really thinking about them. You're imagining yourself in that car. But the person driving thinks everyone is watching and admiring them. People spend money to impress others, but others are too busy thinking about themselves. This leads to unnecessary spending and financial pressure. At its core, wealth building is simple. Saving equals income minus ego. As people earn more money, they often increase their spending to match. They try to look successful instead of actually becoming successful. If you can control your ego and keep your expenses low, you automatically increase your ability to build wealth. Life is unpredictable. Markets go up and down. Crashes happen. No one can predict the future perfectly. That's why you need a margin of safety. You need to be prepared for uncertainty and avoid taking unnecessary risks. Also, success in investing isn't free. The price you pay is emotional. You will feel fear when markets fall. You will feel doubt when things are uncertain. You will be tempted to quit. The people who succeed are the ones who stay calm and keep going. In the end, the difference between success and failure is not intelligence, it's mindset. Ronald Read became wealthy through patience and discipline. Richard Fuscone lost everything because of risk and lifestyle. Your future will not depend on how much you earn. It will depend on how you think. Because in the end, your psychology determines your wealth.